Hello and welcome to another episode of the It's the Pictures podcast. This is episode number 206, and I'm joined by my co-host Evan Crean. Hi, Evan.
Hey Max, how's it going?
Oh, I'm pretty tired today, Evan. As you know,
Yeah,
I saw you earlier
yes.
for quite a weekend. Um, I don't know if it gets easier next weekend with being Halloween and we have daylight savings coming up. You know, that's a whole shit
Boy,
show. But we'll see where that goes. But Evan, we're also joined by a guest today, our good friend and fellow BOFCA member, Andy Crump. He is a Boston culture journalist who covers film, music, and being a dad for way too many outlets. You can find his collected work on his personal blog, which hopefully he'll share the link to that. And apparently he's composed of roughly 65% craft beer. Can you believe that?
I can believe that because he recently gave me some craft beer as a present, as he periodically does. He'll make me a kind of like a Crump 6-pack, 4-pack. I forgot how many beers he gave me, but they're usually all delicious and fun variety.
Well, welcome to the show, Andy.
Four, thank you very much. It's always four because it's representative of one, the industry standard, and two, my own physical gains. That's the way I do things.
So, Andy, outside of, I know that recently you've been doing some work from Time Magazine. Where else can it says your personal blog? Where else can people find your work?
You can find everything that I write. I will post links to on agcrump.work.com. I just recently upgraded that URL, sorry, the domain. So it's agcrump.work. I write at a lot of places. Predominantly, I write for Joy Sauce these days, an Asian American Pacific Islander owned and operated culture site. I write not just about movies for them. I am the token white guy on their pitch meetings, which is a
How
delightful
does it
experience.
feel, token white guy?
Feels awesome, actually. Like I was told that if I publish 100 articles once I get to 100 articles published on the site, I get an honorary Asian name. So I'm very excited about this. I cover a lot of cultural topics that are outside of my own personal experience, and I find that pleasurable and doable. I think in part because I have so much experience writing about the movies, and I think the great critic Wesley Morris, I believe, once said long ago, and I'm not 100% sure that he said it, but I think it is. He once opined that when you write about movies, you write about the world. So therefore, I can write about all manner of worlds and not just the movies. But I write for them. I write for Paste Magazine. I write for Time, as you pointed out, the Daily Beast, the AV Club, Pop Heist, and I can't remember where else. Fangoria occasionally, and other places even more occasionally. I think it's easier just for me to say I've never written for who I haven't written for. I've never
Yeah,
written for the LA Times, and I've never written for the Boston Globe, and that's like the Austin Chronicle and a couple other places. That's basically it.
awesome. I mean,
Man
good.
about
I mean,
town.
That's me,
you're a man of all websites.
except for like four.
Well, today we have an interesting topic where we wanted to highlight the actor Keanu Reeves because of his movie in theaters, Good Fortune. Not specifically the Matrix movies or John Wick. I feel like we've covered those ad nauseum. I think we even did a John Wick episode fairly
We did.
recently, but
Yeah.
Keanu has such a large filmography of movies. I mean, I don't know how much we'll even go into Bill and Ted here, but like that's even a trilogy, right? So he has tons of things going on. But before we get into Keanu, we're going to do a little bit of news here. And I thought the thing that interested me the most is that before the end of the week last week, director Jane Schoenbrun, who does Where All the World's Fair and the other movie that I really liked.
Saw
Come
the
on, guys,
TV
help.
glow?
Yeah. I saw the TV Glow is attached to adapting the Black Hole graphic novel series as a TV series for Netflix. Evan, I know you were a fan of movies. Are you excited to see next works?
I mean, so I definitely appreciate their craft. I don't know if they like land with me 100%, but I saw the TV Glow. I thought was really visually interesting, and I think it's probably the best recreation of the '90s I've seen in a movie or TV show, so respect there. I wasn't particularly when I saw Black Hole, I was thinking of something else, and then I started reading this, like, summary in the article, I'm like, "Oh, I haven't heard of this, so I don't know I don't know what this is, but it sounds like it could be good." It's horror, right? It's
Yeah,
definitely in
and
Schoenbrun's wheelhouse.
I think she was in the process of trying to write a film treatment as well. So it's interesting to hear that she's attached to this. Andy, did you feel similarly to her two previous movies, or how did you feel about them?
I really liked We're All Going to the World's Fair. I remember very happily reviewing that and talking about that with folks after seeing it through virtual Sundance, a million years ago. I enjoyed that. I thought that was I it was it's a dreadful movie in the sense that it runs on and is built out of dread. You never at any point, can capably guess what is going to happen or where the story is going. I think just as a piece of, like, DIY indie craft, it's exceptionally well done. I think it communicates what it is trying to communicate very well. I feel like I Saw the TV Glow surprisingly took a lot of steps back for them. Jane, I think, is a great director with a great visual sense, a great, narrative sense, but I think it's such an explicit movie in terms of what it is about that it it and I'm saying this as a cisgendered male, it didn't feel like there was a lot to there I didn't feel like I had a lot to really bite into or to think about after the fact other than the visuals, other than, the performances. There to me, everything that was under the hood wasn't really under the hood, it was really all on top. And, in peaks and at points throughout the movie that made it drag for me. I'd be very curious. I'm not obviously not writing them off. I still think Jane is a terrific filmmaker. I think they have a lot to say, and they say it, I think, with more passion than a lot of people, who have made 10 times as many, well, not 10 times, but, have made many more movies, um, are
Yeah.
capable of saying. So I'm on board with whatever Jane does. I just was not wild about I Saw the TV Glow. And I will say, in part, because I don't think it's a horror movie, and I got very sick of having that conversation with people, on and off throughout last year that it came out. I can't even remember what year it is. Yeah, yeah. So, that's also part of it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned the premiere of We're All Going to World's Fair being like on a digital platform, because that movie feels like very much one that's built to like watch through your computer screen and feel like you're looking right through on the other side to the lead in that movie. I'm a little bit higher on I Saw the TV Glow than either one of you. Mostly, I don't know if it's fueled by nostalgia for that '90s era, like Canadian Nickelodeon Saturday night television, or just kind of the visuals of the movie. But yeah, I appreciate that. Excited to see what Jane does next, whether it's Black Hole or another movie. Keeping on the
Yeah, don't
topic
they
of
have another movie
Netflix,
coming out too?
I think they said, well, like I said, they were working on a treatment for like a camp movie.
Yeah, Teenage Sex and Death. It can't my
Hmm.
asthma. Is that what the name of it?
Maybe. But like I was saying, keeping on the Netflix train, we already have heard that the Stranger Things final season extravaganza bugaloo finale is going to be like, I don't know, an hour and a half each episode, and like the way that they filmed it was like a movie for every episode. And in a change of pace, Netflix has decided that they're going to release the finale. I guess it's going to be on New Year's Eve, concurrently on Netflix and in theaters. Let's start with Andy. Have you been done with Stranger Things for a while, or were you never with Stranger Things?
I think I stopped after the 3rd season. I think I hit a point in my life where I just stopped caring about the the contemporary television industrial complex. There's too much television to watch. It's very hard to keep up with all of it, and I would really just rather be watching movies for the most part. I also yeah, I think I got very I think I think I was v liked the 1st season well enough and was compelled enough by it to be to wanna see where the story went from there despite the heavy nostalgia elements. And then everything just like, there's a clear template for the next 2 seasons in turn like, you see if you were to, like, look through 1980s cinema, they're like, it's clear, like, I don't feel like these guys are telling a story that's coming from the heart. I think it's all coming from their heads and their recollections of the things that they like, and at some point well, it's season that's the point of season 3, I don't know why I'm saying at some point. Season 3, I kind of just said, "Alright, I'm not on board for this anymore," and kind of gave up on it. The idea of it I mean, you like, what, hour and a half episodes? That to me is like, again, I could just watch a movie. Why are you making me sit through 90 minutes of television, for regular episodes? That just feels like I don't know. It feels excessive to me, and I think excess and nostalgia go hand in hand very badly together. So I don't know. Yeah, that's my opinion. I have no opinion on the show since that season, since the end of season 3. I do think it's interesting that it has maintained such cultural relevance for so long. I guess maybe that's part of it is that it's premiered around the time that the new horror wave, the new horror renaissance started. So it's kind of had time to really burrow into popular consciousness before we got to the point we're at now, where it seems like there's a new horror movie coming out every hour. So yeah, um, I can't really say much more about it than that.
Okay, it's funny that I could see, like, your argument about nostalgia, and yes, I think the show definitely feeds into that a lot, but I find it funny that maybe the younger generation from us has really latched onto it. I don't know, like, they don't have that inherent nostalgia when they watch it. They didn't live through, Never Ending Story, which is like a pivotal song point, and I guess the end of season 3 or something. So, I guess, that's kinda interesting to see how maybe it's a tired for our generation, but, like, the younger generation has really latched onto it and said, like, "This is ours now." Evan, are you a Stranger Things watcher?
I really was into it when it first came out. I remember a friend of mine convinced me to watch it when he described it as Steven Spielberg meets Stephen King, and I was like, "Okay, I can get on board with that." And I really did like its first couple of seasons. I found it really engaging. I really liked the homage to his cinema and the horror genre, but I also just kinda got tired of it, and I've grown especially tired and to not care about it with all of the even though between COVID and the writer strike and everything delaying these seasons and them just taking forever. And also this idea that, like, they need to just keep expanding the expanding them into, like, movie-length episodes. It's like, how much story do you really have to tell here? And it just feels excessive to the point where I'm just like, I just don't care. I don't have that much like, I saw a clip somewhere that said, like, "Oh, well, they're gonna explain what the upside down is. There's gonna be a whole episode about that." I'm like, "I don't need that. I don't need a whole episode on what the upside down is. I kinda already know what it is. Who cares?"
I think that's the problem with I think that's well, not the problem, but I think that's the peril of something like a scripted television series where you have all this extra space. I mean, right now, especially a show like that that has a ton of money and a ton of production value behind it and a ton of expectation behind it. You tend to you have like you run into this tendency to overindulge. And I guess indulgence is fine. I mean, I like watching, artists indulge. That's one of the best reasons to watch a movie is to see somebody be indulgent. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that we need to know. I don't think you need to know. I don't think you need every single thing in a story explained. I think that ruins or robs the thing, whatever the thing is, of its power. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like you made too much money.
What about you, Max?
Yeah, so I guess like this idea of excess, I mean that is certainly what the series has gone to, right? I mean, you look at the actors involved and many of them have already started full-blown careers in other directions, while still having to kind of be attached to this big-headed demon of Stranger Things. And, Netflix has been experimenting with like splitting up their content recently because they want to hold on to subscribers. So I think like Stranger Things is even coming out in three waves, if I'm correct. Like one wave is like in November, another wave is like Christmas Day, and another wave is like New Year's Eve. So that way
God,
they can have subscribers tied in for those periods.
that's
That's
hilarious to
wretched.
me.
That's
Yeah,
so wretched. I hate that.
yeah. It's a funny point of comparison too, because I'm just thinking like in terms of like I barely watch things on Netflix anymore. I use a lot of other streaming outlets much more. But like I'm more excited about the new season of The Diplomat than I am of whatever all of this Stranger Things business is. And that's a bad sign.
Yeah.
The Diplomat. I'm like, that's a fun show. That'll hook me. I'm interested in watching that. Stranger Things? Nah.
That's for the kids, those Gen Zers. They can watch their Stranger Things while we watch our diplomats. We're getting old. I mean, I think that's part of it.
Yeah. So I think the other two shows that Netflix kind of done this with thus far, from my recollection, is Wednesday. The most recent season was split into two different blocks, and also their big hit, Bridgerton. That's also being split into two different blocks. But yeah, Netflix trying to keep subscribers. Whether or not we're excited that Netflix is having a movie in theaters on the same day, I don't know. It's a change for them, I guess, or maybe there's nothing going on New Year's Eve. They thought might even catch a few extra million. I don't know, but good for them. We'll see how this tale that's gone on far too long finally ends. And I guess in other news, to kind of tie it into our topic of Keanu Reeves, this week, James Gunn, overseer of DC, at least in the current age of Warner Brothers Discovery, as we learned this past week that Warner Brothers is for sale and they would like to sell. So we'll see who ultimately buys Warner Brothers and if they're still interested in what James Gunn has to say with DC.
Paramount has certainly been trying. They've certainly been making a lot of offers.
I think I saw Apple rumored to be attached to at one point this weekend.
Oh,
Um, but yeah, James Gunn talked a little bit about Constantine 2. It's one of Keanu Reeves' movies that's one of his many movies that's well loved. Never had a sequel, but I've never actually seen Constantine all the way through, but I know that there's lots of people who love it plenty. Have either one of you seen this movie?
Yeah. Um, I wouldn't say that if if I still watched like, cable television, if I was like in that period of my life where I could sit down on the couch, turn on TV and channel surf, and if that was on like FX or something, I would watch it and I'd be perfectly happy with it. It's not a movie that I would reach for, especially not in Keanu's, filmography, um, before anything else. But at the same time, I mean, I guess I would say consequent to that, I don't understand the cult love of it. I think it's fine. I don't think it's a it doesn't really feel like a Constantine movie. If you've ever read the comics, it's an incredibly sterilized version of the Constantine graphic novel. It's practically antiseptic compared to how grungy and shocking and gross the Constantine comics can get. I guess at this point, I don't know if it's necessarily something that I need to see Keanu revisit. I'm much happier seeing him try new things, I would rather see him get away from his franchises, which I know is not going to happen. I know he's going to keep on going back to them for as long as there's, incentive, whether that's, a good script or the chance to make a buck so that he can give, like, his bucks to other people because that's what he does. Yeah,
Yeah, he
I don't
likes
know.
to pay
Yeah,
his
right, like,
crews and whatnot, right?
that's why he takes, like, giant paychecks so that he can, like, I don't know, buy a homeless guy a house or whatever. I don't he's never done that. But like you understand. Like he's a charitable and kind person. I guess if Gunn is involved, I'm slightly more interested because I think Gunn is the kind of person who would take who would both understand how to use Keanu Reeves as a personality and as an actor, and also embrace what the comic books are about and how they behave. So I guess you know, I have no say over whether the movie gets made. It's gonna get made. If like the checks are there, it's gonna get made. But I guess I'll go see it once it's in theaters. I don't
I know, Evan, before we started that, you this is one that you hadn't seen either, right?
Correct, yeah, I haven't seen Constancy. I've seen, like, bits and pieces of it, but I never actually, like, sat down to watch it start to finish. But, yeah, I've heard that it's not the most faithful adaptation of the graphic novels, and I've got the sense, Andy, even though I never read them, that there's a lot more, like, macabre kind of stuff in there that didn't
yeah.
quite make it to the movie, and I feel like at the time they were making this movie, it was kind of following the trend of a lot of, like, comic book and video game adaptations where they're like, like mediocre CG, like, we're just happy this character is gonna get an appearance on screen, and so, like, let's make it as palatable to, like, wider audiences without necessarily, like, delving into what fans love about it, but I could like you, I could see James Gunn saying, "Okay, let's play up the humor, let's make it gory and gross, and let's basically, like, take the Guardians of Galaxy approach to something
Yeah.
like that."
Yeah, like, I don't think The Suicide Squad was a good movie by many stretches of the imagination, but I think it feels like an honest attempt at doing something different that these kinds of movies don't usually do. It feels like it felt like a good representation of what the comics are about, and I there's a lot of like macabre doesn't really doesn't begin to describe how dark and messed up some of the Constantine storylines are. I will happily loan you a couple of the comics that I have if I can find them in my collection of boxes of stuff under my bed. But I think I agree with you. It did feel like that movie was made to get the character on screen so that for whatever need to satisfy the fans of the series, it felt very perfunctory. There were fun things about it. There were some inventive things about it, but it felt like a very half-hearted attempt by a studio at putting I would say, one of the darker contemporary comic book titles out there on screen, and at a moment really when, like, the movies weren't ready for that kind of thing, or I guess superhero movies weren't ready for that kind of thing, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine if James Gunn wants to make a Constantine movie. He has my blessing. Just, make it feel like a streamlined and self-contained story instead of The Suicide Squad feeling like it really just wants to be a television series.
Well, I'm glad that you could talk about this, Andy, from someone who's familiar with the comics, as I am not familiar, and I know, like, my kind of base for something that's darker as a Hollywood movie would probably be The Crow, right? Or, like, I don't know, like, how dark Spawn gets as a movie. I know, like, that's kind of more darker graphic novel, but
Yeah, I'd say Constantine gets darker, definitely darker than Spawn, and uh, a little darker depending on the storyline than The Crow, and I guess it depends on which Crow comic you're talking about, because there are multitudes of them. Well, not multitudes. There's like 3 or 4 of them.
That's enough
That's
variations.
enough. I guess you could call that maybe not multitudes, but close enough.
alright, well, Speaking about Keanu Reeves, we're going to jump into our featured topic now, which is what we're calling popular Keanu Reeves movies, excluding the Matrix and John Wick franchises. I guess now he's appeared in what, five John Wick movies if you count Ballerina, maybe five Matrix movies if you count like Animatrix, if he's had like voice acting roles in that too. Lots of Matrix, lots of John Wick. Thankfully, Keanu's been in a lot of other popular movies too. Some of the ones that like came to mind pretty easily. You had in '94 opposite Sandra Bullock, and he was in Speed. You had in
Mhm.
'91 Point Break. That was the Catherine Bigelow movie. That when I think about that one, I often think of like the first Fast and Furious is almost doing like a remake because it feels very similar.
Oh, yeah, the whole undercover cop kinda
Yeah,
falling in love with the people he's supposed to be, like,
right.
investigating. Totally.
Yeah, the Bill and Ted's trilogy, which the first two movies were late '80s, early '90s, and then during the pandemic, we got a third movie in that franchise. Other movies that I really like is something like Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola adaptation. That's always fun to watch. We're gonna dive into some more like in-depth movies, but Evan, off the cuff, what are some of your favorite Keanu Reeves movies that don't necessarily fit the Matrix and John Wick fold?
So, I mean, I like I like Keanu Reeves as action guy when he's like Speed and Point Break, I kind of feel are kind of similar flavors of Keanu Reeves. They kind of like uh cocky, like cop, SWAT guy kind of persona that he's rocking in those movies. I mean, like, I love his character. Love his character named Johnny Utah in Point Break. That's this is an amazing name for a character. So yeah, like Speed, Point Break are definitely up there. But I've always had a really strong soft spot for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure in particular, and the Bill and Ted's movies in general. But Excellent Adventure I've seen a lot more times than Bogus Journey. And there's just something so genuine that Keanu Reeves brings to the kind of like clueless stoner character that he plays in those movies, and it's just really fucking endearing. So I've always, like, really liked him. Those I would say those are my, like, kind of core Keanu Reeves movies, but I've liked, him in Devil's Advocate and some of the other things I've seen him in. Like, for this episode, I also watched a movie called Destination Wedding, which is like a rom-com with him and Winona Ryder, where they play these, like, really cynical, like, misanthropes who end up going to the same wedding, like a destination wedding at, like, a vineyard. It's like her ex and his stepbrother, and they're both just, like, miserable people who hate everyone else and end up falling for each other.
Funny, Evan, wasn't this Destination Wedding like almost like post Stranger Things Winona Ryder? Like she got her groove back, if you will, or got
Yeah,
accepted by Hollywood again, and they're like, oh, let's team these two actors up together.
yep. Yeah, it was, I think, 2017 or 2018 was when that movie came out. So, yeah, definitely post Stranger Things. But, yeah, I mean, those are some of my Keanu Reeves movies that I know and love. There's also I believe it's 1988 or 89. Maybe I'm misremembering the year, but it's a hockey movie called Youngblood with Rob Lowe and Patrick Swayze, where Keanu Reeves plays a very bit part as the French Canadian goalie on their hockey team. I love him even in that tiny role. 1986, I was wrong.
Andy, let's give you the same allowance here before we dive into films more in depth of some of your favorite Keanu Reeves movies that you'd like to jump into.
Uh, you know, uh, I mean, there's always My Own Private Idaho. One of his earliest, in fact, yeah, definitely one of his, around the same era as Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey and Point Break. I think probably like one of his first great early artistic achievements as an actor. I think he's I think he's quite good there. In some ways, he's both very recognizable, like, you can see the traces of the actor that he winds up becoming. you know, 34, 34 years later. But in some ways he's, not recognizable at all, which I think is very interesting. And I think it's interesting to go back and reconsider it kind of in light of who he has become as a figure in pop culture. I also really liked him, and this is going now we're snapping forward many, many years and going to a very different kind of movie. I really liked his appearance in The Bad Batch by Anna Lily Amirpour. And I think that was 2017, if I'm not mistaken. That was 2016. Um, where he basically plays this enigmatic kind of cult figure who is running a more or less successful and semi-civilized town in a post-apocalyptic wasteland in a dystopian vision version of America. I like that. I think the movie's a little loose, but I like its use of Reeves because I think it's playing into the the perception that people have of him. I think it uses his iconography and his persona in a way, in like this very metatextual way that winds up kind of snapping back in our faces, further down the line as you get more into the movie. So I think that's a somewhat undersung but very, very gratifying Keanu Reeves performance from and recent would be the next, like the last 10 years worth of work that he's done.
Well, I know like one of the arguments that, I've seen made about Keanu Reeves is that he could be somewhat wooden as an actor, and maybe some of that gets, covered up in roles that he does in those big franchises, Matrix and John Wick, because, they're such physical roles, and he's such a go-getter for doing his own stunts and doing a lot of those physical performances. But Andy, I wanted to give you another chance to talk about him and whether or not you believe he's wooden, because I know that like people would point to his performance in my own Private Idaho as like maybe a deterrent against thinking that way, or if you there was other roles that you feel like, really shout out his acting ability.
I mean, I think there's an article that Angelica J. Bastian wrote ages ago, really, I think for Vulture, really breaking down his acting style. I don't think that he is, I mean, I certainly think he's had performances that have not been, that are not, him at his best, which is true of pretty much
Anybody.
anybody with very rare exceptions. Like every actor has crummy performances or performances that are not up to their highest standard. I don't think Keanu Reeves is, I don't think Keanu is, an exception in that regard. But I think what I think a lot of people perceive as him being wooden is him maybe being judicious or being thoughtful or really trying to create a character that doesn't feel like something that is scripted to sound like natural within the context of the movie. Like someone, he doesn't sound super polished all the time, and I often feel like that's sort of his point, or like the point of his the choices that he makes, where he's not trying to sound so like super, like incredibly natural. He's not trying to sound real. He's not trying to sound real in like in this movie going context. He's trying to sound like a real person. He's trying to sound like he's trying to emulate the way that we talk, or that people talk in real life, and not the way that people talk in movies, if that makes sense. I think he got a bad rap for a very long time because he's had a lot of pretty bummer roles, I would say. Um but I always think that there's been something there that people just haven't, respected, because it's a lot easier just to be like, "Oh, he's so wooden. Oh, he's such an airhead actor." Like, I like the Merchant of Venice beach gag in The Critic, but I think that in like the TV show The Critic, but I feel like that was the perception of his acting talent kind of writ large, and I never felt like that was totally justified or fair.
Ever do you have a comment on this?
I'm just mostly just nodding my head in agreement to what Andy was saying. Yeah, he has
Yeah.
gotten kind of a bad rap as, like, an airhead, but I think, yeah, there's a lot more going on than people give him credit for. I mean, I think he has a range, I think. It's not, like, the widest range, but I do think he can be very funny, and he has, skills outside of just being a very physical actor, which he is, and it's proven in the Matrix and John Wick films. Like, he can be very physical, he can do all the action stuff, but I think, in times I've seen him even in what was that movie, Always Be My Maybe, when he was playing himself, very funny in that,
He's just
extremely funny.
he's he's great in that. I don't
Yeah,
like that movie very much, but I honestly, I just, you know what? If you remake that movie, it should really just be about the like that that should be like the whole. He should be in the whole movie. That should
yeah,
be the love triangle. It should be about like this, like that battle of wills. But I guess the cameo will have to suffice.
right. I mean, and then there's the movie Keanu,
Hmm.
the cat named Keanu that, he has a cameo in,
Which
basically.
which is amazing. I again love that. Uh, I think that's. I mean, I feel opposite to how to how I feel about Always Be My Maybe. That had to just be a cameo. I wish that I wish Always Be My Maybe had been Randall Park versus Keanu Reeves for the affections of Ali Wong for 90 minutes. That would have been amazing. But yeah,
So, although Keanu Reeves has never really won, like, or been nominated for, like, Oscars or Golden Globes or Emmys, he remains a, really bankable star, right? He is in a lot of box office successes and, I guess that shows that people generally like him. We talked a little bit about this at the front where he is a very beloved actor, and that there's some articles I shared here from Time Magazine and the BBC about different times where Keanu has certainly, um, you know, been a nice guy around town, or people have had nice things about him. Uh, do you think like this public persona of him being nice is something that like I don't know if it I'd say help his career or just you feel generally like you want to support him more. Evan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it certainly helps that he's known to be an all-around nice guy, from being respectful towards female fans and not, like, being gross when they wanna get photos with him. He does that thing where he puts his arm around in a way that it's not, like, actually around them from, doing other things like, taking these big paychecks and paying them out to the crew and taking a little money for himself. I definitely think that helps someone's reputation as being a good person. I think people wanna support that. So I definitely think that counts towards his box office performance. But that said, I think he also just is has a genuine energy about him, a genuine charisma that I think people respond to, in addition to him being a decent person outside. Like, I know a lot of people like Tom Hanks because generally he's a nice guy. Like, there's very few stories of him being a dick to people, and I know that also plays into people wanting to, like, see Tom Hanks movies. He's America's dad, right? People love him. And I think Keanu Reeves is also who people really love him too and want to go see him in movies, both for the energy that he brings to the screen, but also because he's a decent dude outside of being in the movies.
Right, and I mean, sorry, Andy, but I mean, like, sometimes we've seen over the years that, like, people will be like, "Don't meet your idols," right? Or, like, maybe it's not as great as what the outside persona is, but, before I go further with that, Andy, please share.
I was gonna, just follow up to, agree with Evan. I mean, especially like going on, like think about the Tom Hanks, reference here. The only time I can think of him being a jerk was like him yelling at a guy to get out of his and his wife's face because the guy would not leave them alone while they were trying to leave some event or some. And that's like if that's the one thing that I can think of Tom Hanks like doing, like he was justified. Leave celebrities alone. Let them live their lives, you know? I think people want to like I think people want to feel good about I promise I will take this back to human beings in a second. People want to feel good about the brands that they support, and I think you know conscious consumerism is a thing. People want to buy products from companies that are are carbon neutral or do lots of charity and do philanthropic work and treat their employees well and such. I think that hunger, that desire extends to the pop culture that people consume. People want to put their viewership, their listenership behind artists who are good people. I think that's not necessarily the standard you should hold artists and to uh with the obvious caveat of like, yeah, if your favorite artist turns out to be a criminal who does awful things and hurts people, you could still watch their movies or still listen to their music, but try not to actively support them, I guess, at the same time. I think people like Keanu Reeves because he's honest and sincere and he does good things for people and keeps very little for himself, even though he clearly, I'm sure, has more money than all three of us combined will ever make in our combined lives. He still he gives his money away. He's good to crew members. He's good to his cast members. He's good to his fans. He, and I think people are attracted to that. I think there's a tragic side to that. I think a lot of his generosity and kindness, I think, comes from places of pain and deep tragedy and hurt. I think he's just a good person on his I don't get the impression that he's a good person because bad stuff has happened to him, but I do think that his goodness is amplified by the fact that he has gone through and experienced some, some painful stuff that a lot of people wouldn't come back from. And I think people see all that and they see a lot of themselves in him. I think he's a great slate for people to project their own feelings onto, in addition to just being someone who's very easy to support and to rally behind.
Right, and I promise I won't juxtapose him against Jared Leto for very long, but, it is worth noting where Tron, Ares did not do great business. Some people are now pointing to, whether or not Jared Leto is box office poison. He certainly doesn't have a clean sheet, if it will, and, how much that contributed to Tron Ares not doing good business or not, we won't ever see those receipts. But it's certainly, you feel better going to a movie when there's somebody who you feel that your money's supporting and, it's a good guy as opposed to someone who you feel like actively disgusted to be sitting there and watching.
Right, someone who gives you the ick, as the kids say.
As the those young people say. So, like, dude, if there were only 2 movies in theaters right now and those movies were Tron Ares and Good Fortune, it feels like it isn't a choice. You're gonna go see Good Fortune.
Right.
Because, would you rather or, like, even take away the titles of the movies, would you rather see the Jared Leto movie that's in theaters or the Keanu Reeves movie that's in theaters? Like, I can't think of the
Yeah,
last
it's a
movie that Jared
no-brainer.
Leto it's a no-brainer. What's the last I can't think of the last thing Jared Leto did. Not where I enjoyed him, because I don't enjoy him, but, like, the last thing he was in that was just good. Whereas, like, Keanu has been in a lot of good to very good movies, certainly in the last 5 years, I would say. And also he is not a total creepazoid who's high on his own supplies. So yeah.
Yeah, so now I wanted to give us an opportunity, you know, I had to put aside here that Keanu, given his large filmography, has also been in his fair share of stinkers. Certainly, when you've been in so many movies, you're bound to be in some bad ones. I guess what I saw, what was notable to me was the movie 47 Ronin, which I thought he was pretty passionate about, and I saw um, a lot about when it came out, but I guess it just that was a kind of career setback for him at that point. But yeah, I wanted to go in depth into some of the movies that we wanted to pick out for this episode and see some of our roles of Keanu's that we really like. We touched upon some of them already briefly. Evan, was there something else that you wanted to mention that you particularly like Keanu in and you want people to search out?
I definitely think people should give Destination Wedding a watch because I went into it very skeptical because I did kind of feel like before I'm like, I don't know about Keanu Reeves as a rom-com guy. Like, as much as I like him, I've always kind of felt like maybe he had a more limited range, especially when it came to something like a rom-com. And although I mentioned he was in Always Be My Maybe, I feel like he's there for humor. He's not there for like romance purposes. So it was interesting to sit down and say, okay, I'm seeing him as a lead in a rom com. Is this going to work for me? And I thought he was really good. I thought he was very funny. I thought he had great chemistry with Winona Ryder. The movie was also very just kind of like fast moving, and their banter like was really working for me. And they were both really good at playing just like angry, cynical people who hate everyone and really hate each other at first. And then just keep, they keep just butting heads so much that they just like fall for each other. They realize like we're the same person. We both hate ourselves and hate everyone else. And like, but there's something there. We got something. There's something going on. So that's when I would think I would plug, in addition to all of his roles that I really love, like the ones that I mentioned. But that's one where I'm like, okay, I saw this very skeptical, and I was rewarded by a movie that I very much enjoyed and was glad I sat down to watch.
Yeah, that's fun to hear because I remember like when that came out, of course Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves had a lot of fun of promoting it. I guess they were both coming out into film around the same time, and I guess longtime friends, and it was fun to see them in a project together. But if the like, I was planning to rewatch Something's Gotta Give for this, which I didn't get to. For one reason, I really like the movie. The other reason because it stars the late Diane Keaton opposite Jack Nicholson, and in this movie, Keanu's also playing like the kind of romantic interest like counterpart because he's the younger guy and around Diane Keaton, and that's kind of funny. It's if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I watched it, but it's not like a humongous part. It's probably a little bit bigger than the Ali Wong movie we were talking about earlier, but I think that movie's a pretty terrific watch and a lot of fun. And you know, since Jack's retired, it's nice to see a late era Jack Nicholson movie too. So I definitely recommend that one. The one I watched that I'd never seen before, and it's funny, the reason why I watched it mostly is because there's a pretty famous pinball machine based on this movie. Not that it's necessarily a great movie, but I was familiar with the pinball machine, and that is Johnny Mnemonic from 1995. It's a cyberpunk movie that kind of predates Matrix. Maybe Keanu is secretly the grandfather of movie cyberpunk because not only is he in this movie in Matrix, but he also has an appearance in the hit video game Cyberpunk 2077. In this movie, which is written by, I guess, cyberpunk legend William Gibson. Keanu plays almost like a human hard drive, where he has 160 gigabytes of memory in his head, but he takes on a file that is 360 gigabytes, and that's just way too much. If he holds it for more than 24 hours, he's gonna have brain leakage and he's just gonna like die. And so he has to race and get from point A to point B to get this data out of his head. And along the way, he comes across villains played by like Udo Kier and Dolph Lundgren.
Of
And
course.
yeah, and Ice-T's in this movie too. He's like a cyber Laurent helper in this movie. It's pretty strange, pretty goofy. I had heard, and I guess Criterion Channel had it on there last year. I didn't watch it through there. There's a black and white movie of this version of this movie that exists, and it kind of makes it into like a campy film noir as opposed to like what the color version does. And some people have said that plays better. I don't know. I didn't mention that at the end of this movie, like, there's a dolphin that, like, can hack into people's heads. This movie's a lot of
Did you like it
you're
though? Did
shaking
you
your
have
head
fun with all of its silliness?
I think so. I mean, it's at least an enjoyable bad movie. Like I would say, like it has like I said, I don't really love that. Like it just like it's a let's get from point A to point B type movie, and like you've seen this a zillion times before, and like the technology behind it is really flimsy. The whole movie takes place in like the future year of 2021. And I'm like, yeah, you're worried about 300 gigabytes in 2021. I mean, obviously, it's a 90s movie, but
They had no idea that we'd have to have terabytes. Like they could not have conceived of that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, haven't they, like, also done calculations to figure out, like, the human brain contains, like, petabytes of storage or something like that?
They could have chosen a better name. Man, never mind. I'm gonna leave.
Andy, have you ever seen this one?
I love this movie.
Uh,
Johnny Mnemonic was a mainstay of my movie diet once I had a copy on VHS as a kid. Yeah, I mean it's bizarre and really shaggy, but it moves. It's a lot of fun. Everyone in the movie is on board. I like seeing Henry Rollins show up only to get killed by spoiler, I guess, but only to get killed by Dolph Lundgren, which like I don't know why, but that feels like a sort of a dream come true in a way for the movies to pull that off. I love seeing Ice-T in any anti-authority roles that he can get his hands on, especially there's some nostalgia factor now because like all he does is play, Detective Finn on TV. So no, I like this movie. I think it's great. I haven't seen it in a while. Maybe if I were to watch it now, I'd be like, wow, this thing I rescind that opinion. This is bad, but I remember enjoying it very much. Um, I must have been how here how old am I? I was about 10 years old when this came out in theaters. 11 years old when this came out in theaters. So, um, yeah, no, there's definitely some nostalgia on my part, but
yeah,
enjoyable.
I mean, like definitely, like you could see elements of this movie and other cyberpunk things. It's it's not that far off. I mean, Dolph Lundgren plays like a Jesus freak who's had his whole body like transformed into like cybernetics at this point.
Yeah.
There's literally a line in the movie where it's like there's a ghost in the machine, and you're like, okay, this predates like the anime movie Ghost in the Machine, and I'm like, okay, well, it's like it's obviously still has its pulse on cyberpunk kind of stories and ideas. So in that case, it still works. Andy, was there a movie that you want to like really highlight and go deep into?
I mean, it's I think for me, I think at this point, my relationship with Keanu Reeves as an actor might be more defined by his persona, his public persona than anything else. But because we're talking about the movies, I really like him in Knock Knock. I think that movie does not get enough credit for being naughty in the KNOTTY meaning and the other meaning and complex and dangerous feeling at times. It's we were just talking about like wanting to support people, like good like artists who happen to be good people. The only like the problem with it is that it's directed by Eli Roth, who I think is a perfectly fine director, but reputationally not a great guy in the movie making world. But I think what this is a very good use again, a very good use of Reeves um in a pretty like he plays a normal person. He plays an architect who is left, home alone. His his uh his wife and their kids go on a vacation together. He has to stay home to finish work on a project he's got going on, and he has PT for a shoulder injury. And while he is home alone, someone knocks at his door, and it's two young women played by excuse me, Ana de Armas, who he would eventually trying not to talk about John Wick, but she would
Mhm.
come back around to his career and his life in Ballerina, and Lorena Izzo, or Izzo. I there's like 4 different ways I can think of to pronounce that, so I'm just gonna say the one that is probably the least correct. They so so Lorenzo Izzo and Ana de Armas basically show up at his house, knock on his door, proposition him, seduce him, and then ruin his life. And it's I think the thing that I always go back to when I think about this movie is that Keanu is, for someone who is, I would say someone who is both, again, well off, successful, globally famous, and a better human being than most human beings who have come before him and probably will be, will retain that status among humans who come after him. He's still very relatable. So I think it's very easy to project, maybe this is me speaking as a man wondering what I would do if I were in his situation in this movie. I find it very easy to project myself onto him. He's a very good blank canvas. I wouldn't say blank slate, but definitely a blank canvas. And I think this movie is very good at putting you into his experience, and I think he's very good at putting you into his experience. So I don't think it's one that people think about a whole lot necessarily when they talk about Keanu Reeves movies, but I appreciate that one. I think it definitely does and says a lot of interesting things with and about Keanu's kind of personality and his acting style.
Meaning to see that one. I'm glad that you talked about it. It's been on my list for a little while because yeah, it's a little bit off the Keanu Reeves beaten path, and you're reminding me he also kinda had a cameo in Neon Demon where I felt like he
Mhm,
was pretty menacing in that, and
mhm.
I really liked him in it.
Yeah, that and I think those are the rules that I gravitate toward because I think they're more interesting to think of through his lens as like the lens of Keanu Reeves as Keanu Reeves. Like the this establishment. He's not, he's past the point of just being a well-known actor. He's again there's a definition to what Keanu Reeves is, and it's not just a person who is in movies. It is all these other things that we've talked about that we associate with his name. And so seeing him in The Neon Demon, seeing him in The Bad Batch, going back and rewatching him now in The Devil's Advocate with Al Pacino, again from another 90s movie, it really is a good way to really trigger your reconsideration of his career or your consideration of his career and his acting style. And it's certainly those are movies that I would encourage anyone to go to if they are in the haha, he's so stiff and he's such a, beach surfer boy airhead. Although I don't know who really holds those opinions anymore. If you're listening to this and you do, go watch those horror movies. They'll make you change your mind. For sure.
Awesome. So yeah, we that's a little bit more into Keanu Reeves. I hope that like if you've only seen those 9 action movies, and really have you not seen Speed or Point Break or the Bill and Ted's trilogy? Come on, you got to watch those too.
Yeah, agreed.
Um, you've enjoyed this conversation of Keanu Reeves. Before we get into our last section with what you've been watching, we're going to pause for some station identification. You've been listening to the It's the Pictures podcast. I'm your host, Max Colville. You can find me on Blue Sky at maxcolville.com or just search for me, Max Colville. I'm also pretty active on Letterboxd, always putting my most recent watches on there. I think I, it was weird. I forget what I watched most recently, but it's always fun to watch different things, and you'll see how varied the things I watch are on there. And then you can follow the podcast also on Blue Sky for the most part. The Instagram is currently in a coming soon mode. We are planning to do a big relaunch in the beginning of November, so stay tuned for that one. Evan, where can people find you?
Let's see. I'm like a lurker on Twitter, I'm still on there, but I'm on Threads, Blue Sky, Letterboxd, Instagram as Real Recon, that's real as in film real, and then you can find me every week over on Spoiler Piece Theater, the weekly film review podcast, but not for the next several weeks because I'm taking time off to go on a trip.
And Andy, I know that you're not a real big social media person, but we've already talked about some places where people can see your writing. But why don't you speak instead of me?
Yeah, you can find everything that I write eventually makes its way to AG Crump dot. Hold on, can you pick up the snapping son? AG Crump dot work. You can
You
also, yeah,
better
those
work.
That was like
Not seeing
95%
any
of the reason.
sashaying.
Yeah, like, you can't like see you guys. I'm like dancing over here. Everybody listening to this, anyways. And that was like 95% of the reason why I chose that domain because it just tickled me. So you can find agcrump.work is where all of my writing finds its way. Eventually, it's my portfolio. I am toying with the idea of producing original writing on there to when I don't get to write a pitch that I want to for one of my outlets, assuming that people will actually read it on my site. You can find me on. I would tell you where you could find me on Blue Sky, but I honestly don't remember my own handle. That's how rarely I use that. That's Let me see. Crumpandy.bsky.social. That's me on Blue Sky. You can find me on Letterbox, putting in the least amount of effort possible with every single one of my entries because I have a very hard time with this stuff. It feels like work that I don't get paid for, and it's
I hear that.
yeah,
Yeah, I
and
mostly just log letterbox
yeah,
stuff.
for a while I was doing that, and then the side of me that like cares about follows was like, look, oh, like our notifications are just shrinking down to this many. Like we need to do something about that. No one likes us. So you can find me Letterboxd, Andy Crump. You can find me Blue Sky, as I said, crumpandy.bsky.social, Instagram agracru, and you can find all of my collected work eventually posted to agcrump.work.
All right. Awesome. Normally we share what's been going on with the newsletter. That's also been a little quiet as we plan to do the reboot in early November. Earlier in October, I posted a old review of the what am I thinking? The late Jane Goodall. She passed away recently, and we posted a review I did of her documentary Jane, which you can find on National Geographic, which yes is streaming on Disney. And then I wrote my review of Tron Ares in the most recent proper newsletter, and I also talked about a Sundance movie that is finally out on VOD. I think it's called a Little Prayer, and it has David Strathairn in it and Jane Levy. And I think it's only like a $7 rental. It's a very very good movie. It's a smaller movie for sure. It's family drama, but I enjoyed that quite a bit. All right, but now we're going to move into what we've been watching. Evan, what have you been watching?
So, I think we talked about this in our previous episode that, I've been trying to catch up on some horror movies I missed earlier in the year. I saw the film Him, Justin Tipping's Him, which is a sports body horror, psychological horror movie.
Sports. That's like
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's not my typical genre that I'd be watching, but yeah, it's it's that. It's about a young up and coming football player who has sustained a really bad head injury going into the combine. So he's, supposed to be assessed to get, drafted into the what this movie's version of the NFL basically. And Marlon Wayans plays the like hot quarterback who's won like a million championships, and he offers to take this guy under his wing. Withers is the actor, and he's like, come to my house in the middle of nowhere and we'll train, and if you can hack it, basically like you'll take over my spot as the GOAT. You'll be the greatest quarterback of all time and play for this team, it was the San Antonio Saviors, I think is their name.
Yeah.
And the movie has Julia Fox and comedians Tim Heidecker and Jim Jeffries playing it completely straight. Like Tim Heidecker plays this kid's agent and also Marlon Wayans' agent as well, and Jim Jeffries is like the athletic trainer. But yeah, it's a body horror, psychological horror. Like obviously he starts training with this guy and all kinds of weird fucked up shit's happening. And like he's telling him to do these like really brutal things. Like he's doing this one drill where there's like a guy standing in front of one of those machines that shoots the balls out like the footballs. And anytime he like doesn't land a pass, this guy gets shot at like point blank range in the face with a football. And they keep like dialing up the intensity on it. I was actually pretty into this movie for a while, but I feel like it just took a shit in the last act, and I was just really thought it, like, had a bunch of really interesting ideas of, like, there's, like, maybe a supernatural angle, there's a lot of commentary on, like, fame and, money and sports and injury and all these kinds of things that I just feel like it doesn't really pay off in the end. So I was like into it for a while, but then at the end I was just like so bummed that it just shat the bed.
I think that movie got so it's by no means a good movie, but I think it got unjustly maligned by critics when it came out because a lot of critics reviewing horror movies right now are the same people who, and I complain about this all the time, like 7 years ago, would have not even, like, deigned to write about a horror movie at all because they were above it, and now they have to review them, but they also have very, very little connection to or understanding of how the genre functions, and it's very annoying to me. But yeah, this is not a great movie, but it's if you were put off by the wave of negative reviews that was hit by when it came out, I would second I would advocate going to watch it even if it is not. Yeah, I more or less
I
agree with
definitely
Evan's assessment.
Yeah, I definitely think it's worth a watch for sure. And it was kind of interesting because, like, when I sat down to watch it, like, it'll show like the little like Rotten Tomato score and the audience score, and usually there's like an ocean. It's like an ocean divide between like if critics love it, audiences hate it. And this was like actually more toward the middle, where it was like critics hated it and audiences also kind of hated it, but it was like they were very similar. And I was like, okay, but, like, I try not to let that deter me from sitting down and watching
Sure.
something I'm interested, because who knows? I'm probably good. I could enjoy it. And yeah, I definitely think it was worth a watch. I was just kind of bummed. So when you see a movie and you think there's a lot of good ideas here that they just don't pay off, that's almost sadder sometimes than just watching something that sucks.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because that, like, if something just is just bad through and through, like, you whatever expectations you had for it going into it were built up over time while watching it. They never build into anything meaningful, so you don't get disappointed nearly as badly when it's like when you're into it, and then the last 10 minutes, just like the ship just hits an iceberg and the whole thing just goes underwater.
Thanks for sharing a little bit about him. Andy, what have you been watching lately?
So I watch horror movies a lot, like on a pretty almost a daily basis. But like the last few days, I've been watching the John Woo. Well, not just I've been watching John Woo movies specifically because I love John Woo, but the Hong Kong action classics series on the Criterion Channel. I've been catching. I've been trying to catch things that I haven't seen from that program and revisiting scenes from a couple of movies here and there that I have seen, but just not in a very long time. And oops, I accidentally watched The Killer, which I've seen 100,000 times from start to finish all over again because it's an awesome movie. I I f- I preceded that by watching Once a Thief, which is not a good movie. It's proof that even it's like but I'm glad it exists because it's proof that even greats like John Woo can make baffling and terrible movies. Once a Thief is a terrible, terrible movie. It's funny to think about how cool and ineffable and like unstoppable, but also human Chow Yun Fat is in so many John Woo movies, and where Once a Thief ends with him is just it's bizarre. It's strange. It's not a good movie, but it's an interesting exercise for people who would like to know what a bad John Woo movie looks like and haven't seen it. That one is bad. But The Killer is really good.
So,
Newsflash, The Killer is a great movie.
so if someone was to explore that category on the Criterion Channel for the first time and find like a two or three John Woo movies to watch, what would you point them to, Andy?
I mean, I'm just gonna say just go watch the classics. Just because it's funny, we think about like Hard Boiled and we think about The Killer. As to me, it was a surprise to me to find out how many of the movies, including the John Woo movies, are hard to see in the States. And some of the movies in that lineup aren't available at all, and that to me is crazy to think about because they're so like, especially I would say the killer is so ingrained in our action movie culture that to think about it not being,
Available for so
just
long.
yeah, like, is to me, that's absolutely mind-blowing to think about. I would say I really liked Heroes Shed No Tears. I had never that's another one I had never seen before, but which really just, uh, uh, I watched it twice. I finished it and watched it again, and did not get much sleep that night. It's a war movie. If you've ever seen Eastern Condors, it's a similar setup where there are a team of mercenaries that has to go into enemy territory. In this case, it's mercenaries trying to smuggle a drug lord out of out of Thailand, like across Laos, and these mercenaries are beset on by the drug lords, foot soldiers, and by a crazed Vietnamese general who is comes runs afoul of the mercenaries and loses an eye in the process, and then there's these native trackers who are enlisted by the general to help track down these mercenaries, and it's very, very bloody. It's a John Woo movie and it's a war movie, but it's also like it's even knowing how like the killer ends, it's exceptionally nihilistic, and it's just a really muscular, like tense, tight movie, and yeah, a lot of fun to watch for a movie that is that is as much of a feel bad movie as it is. So I would, if you have not seen Heroes Shed No Tears, now's a good time to see it.
Als I
Sweet.
know, like, there's been some, like, rumblings on, like, boutique Blu-ray forums on Reddit that are a little worried about Shout these days. Apparently, they've discounted a lot of their physical media releases, and people are just hoping that they're moving over to Grove, this universal distribution center, because this year they announced that they got those rights to all those Hong Kong classics, and people are hoping that they continue to release them on physical media. I know Hard Boiled and The Killer are supposed to come out before the end of the year on 4K, so we'll certainly get those. But
And they released not a John Woo movie, but they released City on Fire earlier this year too,
mhm.
which is also the Criterion program. So yeah, all good movies. See them while you can.
All right, I'm gonna be quick until I get to one particular movie, but yeah, I watched some TV recently. I watched the first episode of The Chair Company, which is the new show on HBO by the guys over at I Think You Should Leave. It's an uncomfortable kind of detective story, but funny too. This is kind of like the same team that did A24's Friendship as well, that came out earlier this year. Apparently, it's been doing really good in the ratings. I've heard that they're pretty exceptional, like the HBO's best comedy in 5 years or something. I've only seen the pilot. I haven't watched the second episode yet, but yeah, it's if you like, I Think You Should Leave, you'd probably dig this. The other things I've been watching for Pop Heist, I watched all of Has Been Hotel. That's the Prime Video animated musical adult show. Um, my review for season 2 is not posted yet. The embargo's up tomorrow, so I won't be spoiling too much. Yeah, I watched season 1 for the first time because I had skipped it originally, but I enjoyed that. And stay tuned for my season 2 thoughts. For the horror, I haven't watched that much horror this season, although we talked about it last episode. On the Criterion channel, I turned on Cronenberg's The Fly and watched that for the first time.
Ooh.
I enjoyed that quite a bit. I kind of knew what I was getting into because it's so ingrained in popular culture and what have you, but it still works pretty great. But the movie I wanted to talk to about more in detail was this movie that I saw out of the Animation is Film festival that happened recently. I was provided a screener from G Kids, and it's a movie called Little Amelie, or the character of Rain. And this one, I guess, won the jury prize over there at the Animation of Film Festival. It also played TIFF, but it's based on like a classic story, I guess, where Amelie, who is a Belgian child in Japan, kind of comes into this world. And the first, like, you can hear her mentally, and she's fluid, and you can hear her thoughts. And she's like, for the first 2.5 years of her life, she was a vegetable. She didn't move at all or react to anybody. And then, like, something happened on her, like when she was like 2.5, and she started to kind of take on the world. Maybe this vegetable state was just her mind, right? Of until she was 2.5, she started to notice what was going on around her. The point that they live in Japan is a big point of this movie, although it's not like a Japanese anime. It's very much like she thinks of herself as Japanese and kind of grows up there. And I don't know. I thought the animation is really beautiful. I was moved. It's a great coming of age story. It isn't long at all. I think it's like 80, 90 minutes. But, there was another Japanese anime that came out a few years ago by Mamoru Hosoda, and I think like that was trying to do something like this, but um, I think I appreciated this one a lot more. So I think it's going to be in theaters limitedly on October 31st. So if it's playing somewhere near you, check it out. G Kids is distributing it. And again, that's Little Amelie or The Character of Rain. Um,
Sweet.
Awesome. Sounds like a good one.
Alrighty, so we're at the end of our episode. Um, Andy, I know we've been trying to have you on for a little while now. I'm glad we could have you, and thanks for coming on.
I'm glad to be had.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Andy. Glad we
Yeah,
could
no,
finally get you on.
I hope this was as fun for everybody else, especially you people listening, as it was for me.
And Evan, enjoy your break from the episode. We have a special guest coming on for the next planned episode. We'll have a few more episodes before the end of the year. This is it's coming up quickly for us here. It's the
Mhm.
pictures.
Yeah.
I think normally we have 2 episodes in November and 1 in December because the holidays is pretty crazy to try to record episodes. So don't worry, we still have some good stuff coming for you before we wrap out of 2025. But Evan, thanks again for another great episode.
Yeah, of course. Glad to be here.
All right, we'll talk to everybody again soon. Take care.
See you next time.
Bye.